Nobody? A few? Last night I had to make the choice to not get offended. I was at Sandra's mother's 85th birthday. I was packing things up, and one of her brothers come over and said, "Oh, I figured I would see you over here amongst all the cake." So I was like, man, I didn't even have any cake. I'm just packing it up, right? But anyway, the enemy, he's not full of the devil, don't get me wrong. But the enemy will begin to magnify those things and go, see, why don't you just quit? It's not really working. You didn't really lose 52 pounds after all. It's probably more like 10. But the point is, the enemy will try and magnify things in your life, and he'll use that to draw you away. He'll use that to pull you in. See, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's not going to fix. Whether you're trying to lose weight or whether you're trying to do something different for God. The enemy will use little situations that come up and your ear hears it and you go, yeah. And then you go, maybe I should just not bother because it doesn't seem to work. And so what happens is you quit. And if you quit, that setback comes. But guess what? Comebacks are all a result of setbacks. It's okay to have a setback. Because if you have a setback, you get to have a comeback. And so you need to get excited about that, not about the setback. And begin to say, it is going to work in Jesus' name. So you know what I did? Because, I had some roast beef and gravy last night. And yes, I did have some potatoes. But I got, you know what? Today's a new day. It starts today. So I blew a little bit yesterday. It's all good, though. All right? But you pick up and you move forward. That's about a silly little diet. That can work the same way in your life. There's a situation if you've been praying and your confession has been good and you've been talking to the Lord and you've been letting Him examine some things in your life and you find yourself hitting a bump in the road and you kind of get into the ditch a little bit. As we've said before, you're not going to live in the ditch. You get yourself up and get out of the ditch and get going. God's got a plan for you. He said it's a plan with a hope and a plan with a future. Now, I want to show you this because this is pretty cool. So we see here that Elijah was the big boy. He told her everything to do, and she went and did that. And so he said, stop the fear and all of that. And so he did amazing things. But how many know that even though the man of God was so tuned to what God said, how many know that those words suggest things, and those things can become the fruit of your life if you don't deal with it? So he did some pretty amazing things. Okay? I want you to go to chapter 19 for just a minute. Same book, 1 Kings chapter 19. And so he had some good confessions, and he had some good reports, and he had some good things happening. And suddenly there was a lady in his life that just didn't like what was going on. And she's a typical type of the devil. Okay, I'm not making fun of women. I'm just saying in this case, this is a typical type of what the devil does. Verse 1, it says, and Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and how he had executed all the prophets with the sword. And then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, so let the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow at this time. Talk about get a bad report on a good day. Right? It doesn't matter how many... think about your life. You can have victory after victory after victory. You get one bad report, it'll suck the wind out of your sails like there's no tomorrow. It'll just go, boom. Now this lady here was trying to intimidate him and trying to suggest to him and all kinds of negative stuff. And man, this is a guy that said, it's going to rain when I say it's going to rain. This is a guy and said, God's going to feed me because the ravens are going to feed me. This is a guy that said, hey, remember they visited Nahum. This is a guy that had all kinds of positive things where God was doing this and doing that and doing this and doing that. God was doing an amazing work in his life. And he saw the widow get excited. And he saw them get in the, in the business of feeding their family and coming out of a pit, coming out of a desperate situation. And not one book later, because some lady with a name named Jezebel begins to say, I don't think what you're doing is going to work. And by the time this happens tomorrow, you're going to be just like the rest of those dead old prophets. She said it. And when he saw that, he arose and he ran for his life. Now, how can you get courage in that? Because when you have a setback, you're designed to have a comeback. Even the man of God in this situation. That's why whether you think of it as a pastor or you know someone that's a prayer warrior or whatever, guess what? We are as human as you. And the enemy plants and plots and tries, and he begins to try and get you off course and begin to try and get you to sway the other way. And we know here, because of this lady flapping her yap, he said, I got in fear, and he ran the other way. Now, I find encouragement in that because sometimes our lives, we tuck our tail and we run the other way. Right? It happens. Sometimes we tuck our tail and run the other way. Why? Because the suggestion of something evil coming our way. The suggestion of whether it's a drought in your life, or have you looked at the future, or have you looked at the hope that you say there is, but it doesn't appear because everyone else around us is dying, or something in your life that tries to build a stronghold in your life. And this lady said, I'm going to send a messenger. How many know the enemy sends messengers to you? That messenger, now again, don't judge people. That messenger can be the person that brings you coffee first thing in the morning and says, now let me tell you. That person could come along, and I'm not saying they're possessed. Don't go weird on me here. But the enemy will use things to twist and try and discourage you and pull the life right out of your lungs. Okay? You can be nice and say, get thee behind me, Satan. How I usually deal with negative reports or bad reports, because there seems to be lots of them, try and find something positive in that. Try and find something that you can maybe even change the subject or say, have you ever looked at it this way? And suddenly, that situation, though it may be negative, though it may be true, does not have to anchor itself on you. We had a friend that, remember, and she taught here years ago, but she had a very, very, very troubled marriage. And the only positive she could find was that he actually tied his shoes really neatly. Do you remember that? Do you have any remember hearing that? Nobody here now? All right. Patience is offended. But no, that was exactly what she said. She remembered that was one positive in her marriage, that he could actually do a real good job of tying up his shoes. You need to find a positive and use that as a seed to move forward. Because the enemy is going to plan and plot and to suggest. So she says, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. And when he saw that, he arose and he ran for his life. When he saw that, be careful what you see. Be careful what you see. You maybe need to turn off CNN a little bit. Right? No one's ever going to feel like flying anymore because all it is about Air Malaysia. And I mean, as tragic as that is, absolutely horrid. But if that's building something in your life that says, I don't know if I want to fly, you're reinforcing fear. You're building fear. If you're worried about a job or your economy, and you begin to look at that, it's all you think about. You will be just like this guy, and you will run for your life. And he went to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and he left his servant there. And so, I guess it just really speaks to me that the man of God, who should know better, ran into a brick wall. Ran into a brick wall. There's a sermon that Jesse teaches about, how to behave when you're in a cave. Because they all ended up hiding in a cave because they're hiding out. And that's what happens. We begin to hide out. Because the enemy, where's the enemy? You need to begin to say, wait a minute, when I am weak, Jesus is strong on the inside. He didn't go to the cross and shed his blood just so that I could just get to heaven. He went to the cross so that I could have a life full of the God nature and the God ability. So that I could see things as God sees it. I could do things as God says it. And I could begin to accomplish those things in my life. Do not give in to fear. Reinforce it with faith. Reinforce it with something that will move you forward. But one of the major things is you've got to be settled into the love of God. Go with me to 2 Timothy 1.